I was recording a video for you guys on 5 easy little tips or things to bring for your provider's visit. And one of the things I mentioned in there was a vital signs list. And I thought about that and I want to go into more detail. So that one I was just trying to go through. There's a time limit if you do a short on how much you can talk about. So I don't really like that. I wanted to spend a little bit more in-depth discussion on it. So when I think about vital signs, that's a big word for some pretty simple stuff. We're talking about blood pressure. We're talking about heart rate. A lot of your blood pressure monitors will talk about pulse rate. So those things can be interchanged. Heart rate, pulse rate. That's the same thing as just putting your fingers here, taking a pulse count. And then some of the more things that people don't think about as much, blood pressure is very important. But nowadays, a lot of people have oxygen sensors, those little things you put on your finger and it gives you a readout of your oxygen saturation. It also gives you a heart rate reading, and that can be very helpful. The other one, though, that people don't tend to bring as much to the doctor's office that I wished you would bring is kind of a light trend of your weight. Particularly in the heart world, that can make a huge difference, but in many other parts of medicine, it's very helpful to have a trend of, is your weight going up, is your weight going down, or what's happening. But in all of that, the word I want you to hear is trend. It's super helpful to have a trend of what's going on. I can't tell you how many times I get frustrated, and I think many of y'all have gotten that way too. You show up at some sort of medical visit, or even the dentist, or physical therapy, or whatever, and you're running late. You run in there, or you're stressed because you're not exactly excited to be at whatever this visit is, and they slap a monitor on you here. They put one on your wrist, and then they hit the go button to make that blood pressure machine start counting up. But in the meantime, and I've done it too, they start talking to you, right? So now we're asking questions, medicines, and past medical history and all this kind of stuff. And so you're talking. Well, guess what? Your blood pressure is going to be most of the time way higher than it normally is at home. So particularly if you get into the world of cardiology, or if you're at your family doctor and they get this sky high reading, they're going to kind of wig out, and they're not going to like that because it's bad for your health, right? To have super sky high blood pressure. We call that hypertension. And we're going to want to throw medicines at you. We're going to want to throw pills at you. And then you're going to leave that doctor's visit, I got to take another pill. When you may not actually need another pill. And that's one of the things I find. And yes, many times when it's elevated, most of us will check it again at the end of the visit to get a kind of a better, accurate reading of what maybe your real blood pressure is. Sometimes for a variety of reasons, either we're too busy, or you're in a rush to get out of there, or for whatever reason it slips our mind and we don't check it again. But even that is still really not a true blood pressure reading if you think about it. That is an artificial environment. You're still kind of a little bit wired up when you come to the doctor's office. And so what I love is when my patients come in with some sort of little chart that I can look at, an average of your blood pressures. And so that's super helpful. I'll ultimately at some point get you a little graph a little link to one that I like that kind of trends it out for us. Now, please don't ask me to spend 30 minutes just looking at your blood pressure log. You may have, I've had this, people show up with like novels, literally, that you open up a journal and it's pages and pages of blood pressures. I'm going to skim through that because I just care about kind of what your trend is. I don't care about specific blood pressures unless they're just real extreme, real high or real low. But what I really do care about is, what is your average blood pressure? What is your average heart rate? Again, we mentioned the weight. I like that. Oxygen saturation is another one. So if you could just spot check that for us, you check with your provider. They may have certain specific things they want. I know different places often will do like first thing in the morning and maybe ask you to do another one. For me, if you could just at least get 3 or 4 blood pressures throughout the week, most weeks, and yes, that first thing in the morning blood pressure before you've taken any pills, before you've taken any stimulants like caffeine, before you've had time to be stressed out about work, that first thing, blood pressure in the morning, is really helpful to kind of get a good kind of what's your normal. But then try to spot check it a couple other times throughout the day. And that can be on different days. So maybe today I'm going to check it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Maybe later this week I'm going to check it at 9 o'clock at night right before I go to bed, something like that. But if you could just get me some trends, okay, what's your morning blood pressure running? What's your evening blood pressure running? What's your middle of the day blood pressure running? That's going to go a long way towards us having a better understanding of what we truly do need to treat. Even deeper, it's going to give us an understanding of when we need to treat it. So what if you are taking some other blood pressure pills in the morning, and so your morning, noon blood pressure is really good, but maybe your late evening blood pressure is starting to trend up. Maybe we need to move some of the current medicines you have, maybe shift them around so we get a more stable baseline. Maybe we find out you wake up in the morning, your blood pressure's bottoming out. It's so low that you feel like you're dizzy or something like that. Maybe your nighttime medicines are too much and we need to dial those back. So there's actually a lot we can gather from that. And so the only way I can gather that, though, is if you out there are collecting that data for me. There's many other pieces of data you can bring to the visit that will also help me out, things like the labs and that stuff. And we'll talk about that in more detail. But for this one, it's the vital signs. It's, to summarize, blood pressure, heart rate, plus or minus oxygen saturation. You know, if you want to bring that, that's really helpful. I don't need a lot of those, but oxygen saturation can be helpful. And then don't forget about weight. Weight can be really helpful. Again, you don't have to get it every day if you don't want to, but it'd be super helpful to have several weights along the way to kind of trend where you're going. Okay, hope this helps.